is the hottest sports topic in the league, in the sports world in general. But this was an interesting one that Deion talked about. It had nothing to do with the game. It had nothing to do with them versus Oregon this week in Eugene. I think are they both 3-0? They both 3-0?
3-0.
Both 3-0. Nice. Oregon's ranked. College football is heating up. Like, this is the part of the season with college football where you're out of those warm-up games at the beginning of the year, the money games where you pay teams to come and you swoop up on them for a little bit.
Tune-ups.
The tune-ups. This is now getting into the, there'll be like a 3 or 4 week run of like ranked games, important games, good games, and then they'll kind of get to the weaker part. Then it'll get heavy again in December when we get toward bowl season. But an interesting conversation that Deion had on transfer portal / NIL. And Deion was talking about with the introduction of the new rule of the transfer portal. See, I come from a college era where if you had transferred way back in the day, the only way that you were able to play immediately was if you was at a Division I program, you had to transfer down. You had to go to a Division II program, a Division III program, and then you could play right away. Well, with the revamping of how they do that in the transfer portal, you can now transfer laterally to either another conference or team and play that same year. Now, there's still restrictions where teams can restrict. For example, if you're a player from Alabama, if a coach has wanted to, he can say, we'll sign off on you transferring. Can't go to Georgia. Can't go to Georgia. We can't let you go in the SEC. Now, if you want to go to the Big 10 or Big 12 or Pac-12 or ACC or whatever, Big East, cool. You can't go to SEC. So they still have that restriction. But what Deion was talking about, he said, with the advent of the transfer portal and allowing it to be, it basically becomes college free agency. And now guys go into the portal and they go from a bunch of different schools, and now they're able to be plucked by some of the bigger schools. And what Deion said, he said, I actually feel bad for the high school kids. Because Deion says, I'm only taking 4 or 5 high school kids this year. He says because at the way that they are firing college coaches, at the rate that they're fired, you'll get fired in 2 or 3 years. You'll sign a 5-year contract, 6-year contract, and if you ain't winning in the first 2 or 3 years, they'll fire you. So Deion is like, coaches are more so now saying, well, I'm not going to take this high school senior incoming freshman and try to figure out what they are with a bunch of those guys, when I can jump right in the portal and get a guy who's a sophomore, get a guy who's a junior, who's already made the transition, who knows what it is to be a college athlete, college student athlete, who understands how to get up in the morning for class, working out, who's been through all of the emotional things that you go through emotionally as a freshman. I'm missing home, I'm homesick. And now with the NIL, I can offer money. So not only can I persuade you with my team's success, but I can lace your pockets too. And that's why you've seen Deion come in and have such a huge transformation and has a huge success in his first year at Colorado, because while he may not have had the biggest recruiting class, he was number 1 in the transfer portal. He was the number 1 coach in school in the transfer portal. They were ranked number 1. And that got me to thinking about, man, you're right. The trickle-down effect is now, if you're not a 5-star, or if you're not like a dog, most of the time 5 stars usually get all the scholarships. Well, if I'm not taking a lot of the 5 stars, then the 5 stars end up going to the smaller schools. Maybe not all the Power 5 schools. Well, the sub 1 Division A, the FBS, and the smaller Division I programs, that used to go to the 3 and 4-star kind of guys. Well, now they've been bumped down. And those guys have been bumped down because of the 5-stars have been bumped down because of the guys in the portal. Teams are taking them more than they are the high school seniors. Which means the guys who are 2, 1, and no stars, who may have had opportunities at Division II schools or small Division I schools, are now either pushed to community college or pushed to Division III schools or like HBCU schools. And there's some kids in high school who will not get a scholarship, who are probably deserving of a scholarship and will never get a chance to play college football because of that. Or they'll have to go the walk-on route. They'll have to pay for school and then be a walk-on and try to earn themselves a scholarship. I think it's an interesting topic that Deion, and I think another reason why a lot of people are mad at Deion, yeah, it's the success. Yes, he's very loquacious and the bravado and the confidence in which he does things unapologetically. But Deion has conversations like this out loud, and he says things out loud that the other coaches have been saying in private. Deion's not the first person to go and attack the portal. Go look at your favorite school. They do it too. And now when you add NIL money to this thing, you can entice players even more. I thought about my situation. I was like, man, I was a pretty high recruit back in the day. Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. I had every school you can name. Texas, you name it. Virginia, Oklahoma, Miami, UCLA. I mean, you name the school, I had an opportunity. I had a scholarship to go there. And I chose North Carolina because I felt it was the best fit for me. It felt right. I'm a feelings guy. But if I was facing the NIL period, and let's just say it was between a smaller school that was giving me more money, or maybe that's a matter that would have mattered to me. It would have went from a feel to the feeling of money in my pocket. It would have went from a gut feeling to a pocket feeling. My gut and my heart said North Carolina. But if NC State would have gave me $100,000, I would have been in Raleigh. My heart and my gut said North Carolina. Go Heels. If Michigan would have offered me $150,000 in IL money, $200,000 in NIL money, my pockets would have said, go Blue. A lot of kids are now looking at that. That is a determining factor on where you go to school. It's no longer, Alabama, Georgia, a lot of those schools used to have 4 and 5-star guy, 3-star guy. They'd be on the bench waiting their turn. I got to wait 2 years because the guy in front of me, he's an All-American. And now what's happening is those guys are saying, and this is why you're starting to see teams like Clemson, see teams like Alabama, they go, wait a second, they're mortal. They're mortal. Because the money is being distributed differently. Where it used to be the allure of we're going to play for a national championship. And you're going to be on TV. More kids are looking around now, and I look at me and I go, I come from a situation where I ain't had no bread. My grandmother was making $40,000, raising 3 boys. We were broke. We were poor. So while it sounded great to go to Alabama or Michigan or Ohio State, if somebody was offering me a little bit more bread, I'm out. Because feeding my family sounds a lot better than sitting on the bench broke. So I would go to a lesser school, or maybe not as popular school or as powerful, if the money was right. But that's an interesting conversation. I know some of you are watching have kids right now that are in high school. And you're probably looking up and struggling and saying, man, my kid's really good. Like not, because some of y'all have unrealistic thought processes about y'all kids. Some of y'all kids really not that good. I'm sorry to say that. But some of y'all kids are actually good. And you're saying, man, I'm struggling for my kid to find a school or a scholarship because teams just are not taking high school kids in football. And Deion said the NCAA is going to have to come up with something where they offer more scholarships because He's saying, I am not going to take the chance because my job is dependent upon one thing and one thing only. Like we can be all politically correct if we want to. Deion can have 100% graduation rate. Deion can have no kids get in trouble. Deion can have every kid show up to class on time. Deion can have everything right in the community. He don't win games, he going home. Period. This is a result-driven business. It's big business. And when you don't win, you don't keep a job. So I don't blame Deion and others for saying, I got to win. And I got to win now. Because if not, they're going to have me back at the crib. So going into the transfer portal, pulling these kids out that are ready to go right now, because I don't have time. The AD, the president, the alumni aren't giving me time anymore to develop freshmen and sophomores. And we go through these losing seasons. So I'm going to protect my job, my legacy, my money, and I'm going to go give scholarships to these kids in the transfer portal. I know exactly what I get. I know what they're good at, what they're not good at. You don't know what that freshman going to be. Deion has a freshman on his roster right now. Cromani McClain was the #1 defensive back in the country that has not seen the field yet. And they even asked him earlier this week, like with Travis Hunter being out for a couple weeks with the lacerated liver, what's up with McClain? He'll play when he's ready. And they go, well, what's keeping him from getting on the field? Well, what's keeping him from being ready? Deion said, him. He's the reason he's not playing. Now, read into that whatever you want. But Deion was darn sure, like, oh, when I'm coming over, I'm bringing Travis Hunter. I'm bringing the best two-way player in the country. Because I got a freshman who was the best player in his class who can't get on the football field. So coaches aren't spending their time with 3, 4, 2-star players. The 5-stars get a chance. They get a chance because their athleticism and their ability to translate and transition may be quicker. But teams are saying, hey, listen, I'm going to go to Akron, and I'm going to get the best player in Akron. I'm going to go to the SWAC. I'm going to go to the American Conference. I'm going to get the best player in the American Conference. I'm going to go to get the best player at William & Mary. And I'm going to surround him with the rest of the guys that I got here, and that's going to elevate his game. I'm going to go to these other schools who are looking to get their situation changed and different up, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go grab that Joker who's a sophomore. I'm going to grab him who's a junior. I'm going to grab him who's a fifth-year senior. And I'm going to bring these guys in. Deion brought in 51 players. 51. And he said, I'm only bringing in the class of 2023, 2024, I'm only bringing in 4 or 5. You know how many scholarships you get in college football? You get like 80-something. He's saying, I'm reserving 4 or 5 of the 80-something that I get every single year for high school kids. The other available ones that I have, they go into the transfer portal. I'm going to get more kids out of the portal. I don't have time to develop the babies. Big business. It's sad. Some of your kids will be involved in it, but it's big, big business. Talking about big business, Deion and company find every single week. I don't know how they keep doing this. They keep finding things that are personal. It's personal. Well, as complimentary as Dan Lanning and the Oregon football team has been, the Buffs have found something personal. You're like, well, they didn't say anything. They didn't talk about the glasses and hats and nothing else. They didn't say nothing about Shador or Shiloh or nothing. Well, Jesse, what are you talking about? Listen, I'm like y'all. I'm like, how do they keep finding this stuff? But they found something that's personal. They found something in assistant coach Nick Williams. Probably don't know the name. Probably never heard of the player before, unless you're like a Georgia Bulldog fan and his time as a Georgia player. But Nick Williams, who's an assistant coach, defensive line coach, defensive end. Well, at the time, Dan Lanning, who's now the head coach at Oregon, was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. While Dan Lanning was the defensive coordinator at Georgia, Nick Williams, who was a former player there, who then transferred to Northern Alabama and came back to Georgia as a GA and was working basically for free for 2 years. And in his time there working, when guys come back to be a GA, they're just trying to get those years of coaching experience, trying to develop their coaching acumen and build a resume so that hopefully one day that they could be a college football coach or pro coach or coach in general. I, for one, never had those desires. Don't want to be a coach, can't do coaching. But Nick Williams said otherwise. He thought that I am going to be a coach. Well, the it's personal motivation of this week was Nick Williams was working under Dan Lanning at the University of Georgia, Georgia University, University of Georgia, whatever you want to call it, at Georgia. And Nick Williams said that during his time there and his dealings with Nick Lanning, Nick Lanning told him, "You will never be a coach." Woo! Said you'll never be a coach. Now, good thing for Nick Williams, he didn't believe Dan Lanning. Oh, but he got up in front of the Colorado football team and he told them it's personal. That he knew in his heart of hearts that he was going to be a coach one day, despite what Dan Lanning said to him at Georgia. And that this has been a chip on his shoulder and he's been waiting for this moment. Didn't know when it was going to come. He knew that he'd be a coach. Didn't know he coached under Coach Prime. Didn't know they had this opportunity as the Colorado Buffaloes take on the Oregon Ducks this Saturday. But it's personal. They found it again. As if you needed another bit of motivation, they have found something else to drive them into this game. Will it work? Don't know. Don't know. This is a good football team, this Oregon football team. You got to come out and you got to score some points. With Bo Nix and company, they're going to play. This is going to be their real challenge. Can they beat them? Sure. This college football is very different than like pro football. Like pro football usually stays on pace of the better team is going to win the football game more often than not. College football, it's literally a week in and week out proposition. When you're dealing with young men who haven't figured out a level of maturity and level-headedness just yet, some of these cats come into a game, they done failed their science tests, grades are bad. Somebody that stuffed they sent him an apple while they was away. Now he mad because she out here thotting, and these kids, there's a lot that's happening. Emotionally, it's just not always there. They like being a professional at times. When you're a grown man, you know how to check it at the door. These are still young men feeling out their emotions. So it's always a crapshoot week in and week out when you have good versus good. Now, when you got really good versus directional school, that usually plays out the way it's supposed to play out. And there's an anomaly every now and again where somebody will take over. But when it's good versus good, but they found another one. It's personal. Coach Nick Williams